The ocean was quiet that morning, not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that makes experienced sailors uneasy. A thick layer of grey fog drifted low across the water as a United States Coast Guard cutter pushed steadily through open sea. The crew had been on patrol for hours, monitoring one of the busiest shipping corridors in the region, a stretch of ocean known not only for commercial traffic but for smuggling, armed robberies, and pirate attacks. Most patrols ended without incident. This one wouldn't. Far out on the horizon, barely visible through the fog, a massive cargo ship moved slowly across the water carrying millions of dollars in equipment and supplies. To most people, it looked untouchable, but to pirates, it looked like opportunity. Inside the Coast Guard cutter's operations center, radar screens glowed in the dim light while crew members scanned nearby traffic, cargo vessels, fishing boats, tankers. Then suddenly, one radar contact appeared, small, fast, and moving strangely. The contact vanished, then reappeared seconds later, again and again. No identification signal, no registered tracking beacon, just a fast-moving vessel weaving through the fog near the cargo ship. Immediately, the atmosphere on board changed. Experienced crews know the difference between normal traffic and suspicious movement. Legitimate vessels don't hide their location in open water. Pirates do. The cutter slowly adjusted course. At first, there were no alarms, no shouting, just calm voices and trained eyes watching the screen. Then binoculars confirmed what radar already suggested. A narrow skiff was speeding toward the cargo ship at an aggressive angle, and it wasn't alone. Several armed men could be seen on board, faces covered, weapons visible, the kind of setup seen countless times before major pirate attacks. Within seconds, the Coast Guard cutter accelerated. The massive ship cut harder through the waves as warning systems activated across the deck. Crew members moved quickly into position while radio operators attempted contact with the approaching vessel. Unidentified vessel approaching commercial traffic. Identify yourself immediately. Nothing. Only static. The skiff continued forward. Fast. Too fast for fishing. Too deliberate for coincidence. Another warning was transmitted. Still nothing. Then the pirate boat suddenly changed direction, not away from the cargo ship, toward the Coast Guard cutter. That's when everyone on board realized something strange. The pirates weren't retreating. They were challenging the Coast Guard ship directly. The skiff bounced violently across the waves as powerful outboard engines pushed it faster and faster toward the cutter. One armed man stood near the front holding a rifle high in the air. Another appeared to be recording the encounter on a phone. Maybe they thought the ship would back away. Maybe they thought intimidation would work. Maybe they didn't realize what they were charging toward. Because this wasn't a civilian vessel. This was a United States Coast Guard cutter. And within moments, the pirates were about to understand the difference. A warning siren suddenly echoed across the ocean. The loudspeaker activated. Warning, alter your course immediately. The skiff kept coming, closer now. The distance between the two vessels shrank rapidly. 800 meters, 600, 500. Crew members on the cutter secured helmets and tactical gear, while weapons teams prepared near the rails. The atmosphere remained controlled, but the tension was unmistakable. Everyone knew how quickly situations at sea could become deadly. Then it happened. A burst of gunfire erupted from the pirate skiff. Rounds splashed into the ocean ahead of the cutter. For a brief moment, nobody moved. Not because of fear, because of disbelief. Pirates threatening cargo ships was one thing. Opening fire on a United States Coast Guard vessel was something entirely different, and the consequences would come fast. The cutter immediately shifted position, placing itself directly between the pirates and the cargo ship behind it. Another burst of gunfire came from the skiff. This time, one round struck the side of the cutter with a sharp metallic crack. That changed everything. Within seconds, Coast Guard marksmen moved into position. Precise, calm, controlled, no panic, no wasted movement, just training taking over. The first shot thundered across the water. It narrowly missed the skiff's engine. The second struck part of the rear frame, sending debris flying into the air. Then came the third shot. Direct hit. One engine exploded in smoke instantly. The pirate skiff jerked violently sideways across the waves, but somehow, they kept coming. Even with one damaged engine, the pirates still pushed forward while shouting to each other over the roar of the remaining motors. Another armed man stood and fired wildly toward the cutter. Huge mistake. A second precision shot rang out, then another. One by one, the skiff's engines failed. Smoke poured behind the boat as it rapidly lost speed, drifting sideways in rough water. Suddenly, the confidence on board the pirate vessel disappeared. The same men who had charged aggressively minutes earlier were now scrambling in panic. One nearly fell overboard as the disabled skiff rocked violently in the waves. The Coast Guard cutter closed in fast. Commands blasted through loudspeakers. Drop your weapons! Hands visible! For the first time, The pirates hesitated. Reality was finally sinking in. They had expected fear. They had expected retreat. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by armed professionals operating with overwhelming tactical superiority. One rifle hit the deck, then another. But one pirate still held onto his weapon near the rear of the boat. For several tense seconds, nobody moved. The skiff drifted silently in the water while smoke continued rising from the ruined engines. Then the pirate slowly lifted the rifle again. Immediately, a warning shot cracked overhead. The message was clear. The rifle dropped instantly. Seconds later, Coast Guard boarding teams launched from the cutter. Small tactical boats surged across the ocean, carrying heavily armed personnel directly toward the disabled pirate skiff. Now the pirates looked completely different. Gone was the aggression. Gone was the confidence. Now there was only panic. Within moments, the boarding teams surrounded the skiff. Commands echoed across the water. "Face down! Hands behind your back!" The suspects complied immediately. Weapons were kicked aside. Wrists were restrained. The vessel was secured. Then came the discovery. Hidden beneath tarps near the front of the skiff were extra rifles, ammunition, fuel drums, grappling hooks, and boarding ladders. Everything needed for a full pirate boarding operation. The target had almost certainly been the cargo ship, and without intervention, the crew on board that vessel could have been taken hostage within minutes. But the operation wasn't over yet. Back on the cutter, radar operators suddenly noticed something alarming. Additional contacts, multiple fast-moving vessels approaching from the east. The atmosphere on board changed again instantly. More pirate boats? Backup? The cutter repositioned while armed teams returned to defensive stations. The captured suspects suddenly looked nervous too, very nervous. Out in open water, pirate groups rarely operated alone. The incoming contacts closed distance quickly. 3 separate skiffs appeared through the fog, fast, spread apart strategically. For several tense minutes, nobody on board the cutter knew what was coming next. The cargo ship continued slowly escaping the area behind them, while the Coast Guard ship prepared for another possible confrontation. Then the approaching vessels slowed. Something looked different. Flags could be seen attached to the boats, fishing markers. The incoming skiffs hesitated after spotting the armed Coast Guard teams already surrounding the captured pirate vessel. For several long seconds, both sides remained motionless on open water. Then suddenly, one of the approaching boats turned away. The others followed. Within moments, all 3 disappeared back into the fog without a single shot fired. Whether they were fellow pirates or simply fishermen who realized they had entered the wrong situation, nobody knew for certain. But one thing was obvious. Nobody out there wanted to challenge the Coast Guard cutter anymore. As evening settled across the ocean, the detained pirates sat restrained on board the cutter while investigators searched the captured skiff for evidence. What they found painted a disturbing picture. Navigation routes, coordinates, photographs of commercial ships, recorded videos of previous encounters at sea. This wasn't random crime, it was organized piracy. And according to the evidence recovered on board, multiple commercial vessels had likely already been targeted in recent months. Some crews had reportedly been robbed, others threatened at gunpoint. One attack had reportedly left a sailor injured during a violent boarding attempt. But this time, the pirates had picked the wrong target. As darkness covered the ocean, calm finally returned to the water. The cargo ship that had nearly been attacked transmitted one final radio message to the cutter, thanking the crew for arriving when they did. Without intervention, the outcome could have been catastrophic. Hostages, injuries, possibly worse. Instead, the attack had ended before it truly began. But the story became even more shocking later. Investigators eventually recovered video footage recorded by the pirates themselves during the encounter. At first, the recordings showed excitement, laughter, shouting, engines roaring as the skiff raced toward the cargo ship. Then the Coast Guard cutter appeared through the fog. The mood changed instantly. Voices became nervous. The camera shook violently as warning sirens echoed across the ocean. Then came the gunfire, smoke, panic, screaming. The footage ended with Coast Guard boarding teams surrounding the disabled skiff. For investigators, the videos became critical evidence. But for everyone else, they revealed something even more important. The pirates never expected resistance. They believed intimidation alone would work. And for a few moments, they actually thought they could challenge a United States Coast Guard ship. By the following morning, news of the failed pirate attack spread internationally. Shipping companies circulated warnings. Security analysts reviewed the encounter. Maritime experts pointed out how rare it was for pirates to directly confront an armed federal vessel. Modern piracy usually depends on surprise and vulnerable targets, not direct fights against trained military-style crews, which made the entire incident even more unbelievable. Some believed the pirates mistook the cutter for a civilian support ship hidden in the fog. Others believed arrogance played a role. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The pirates made a massive mistake the moment they opened fire. Out on open water, far from cameras and headlines, The Coast Guard cutter continued its patrol as the sun rose once again over the horizon. The ocean looked peaceful, almost untouched. You would never guess gunfire had erupted there only hours earlier. But somewhere across the criminal networks operating in those waters, word was already spreading fast. A pirate crew had challenged a United States Coast Guard ship, and it ended exactly the way everyone feared it would.